Okay, interpretation is enabled, so go ahead and select your language. Okay, and we will get started. Everybody good? Got your language selected? Great. Okay. And can you all see my screen? Great. Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the second information session of the Small Food Business Recovery and Resilience Grant. Really excited for you all to be here today. We will get started by introducing the team here at the Colorado Department of Agriculture. My name is Mickey Davis. I am the program manager. I'll pass it to Amanda to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Amanda Laban here. I'm Senior Programs Manager for the Markets Division at CDA. And hand it over to Adonai.
Hola, yo soy Adonai y soy el especialista en subvenciones para el CDA.
I'm Adonai, and I am the grant specialist for CDA.
So we're all really excited that you're here today for the information session, and we are your team here at CDA to answer questions about this grant program. I do want to point out that, as you may have noticed, that Adonai is fluent in Spanish and English, so he's a great resource for questions and answers in both those languages. So the way we'll do this information session is going to be pretty similar to the information session that we hosted on October 3rd. So we'll start with an overview of the purpose of this program, talk about some of the specifics of eligibility and what kinds of things are eligible to purchase with these grant funds. We'll talk about some of the priority proposals, the applications that will score the highest, and then we'll leave hopefully the rest of this meeting for your questions. So this is probably the most important slide in our presentation. The mission of this program, this grant program, is to increase access to or lower prices for healthy foods in low-income and underserved areas of the state by supporting small food retailers and small family farms. So all of the applications that the review panel will be scoring will be thinking about this first and foremost. So every application that's submitted is going to need to really make a strong case for how the requested funds will result in expanded access to healthy food. So some things to know about the grant. The maximum grant award per business per calendar year is $50,000. This is the first round of the funding. There will be a second round in the early months of 2024. This round opened on September 27th and will close on November 7th. So I do also want to mention that there may be a third round in the middle of the year, 2024, if we don't expend all of these funds in the first two rounds. A few other things to note, like I mentioned, all proposals must be related to expanding access to healthy foods for low-income, low-access communities. And the application is a Google form that's on our website. And in order to complete your application, you've also got to submit a budget that will be emailed to our program team. So there's two parts of that application. We're really striving to make the process really simple and straightforward. So who is eligible to apply? there are only two business types: small food retailers and small family farms. So unfortunately, this grant is not open to restaurants or food pantries or food trucks selling hot and ready to eat food. This grant is really focused on small food retailers and small family farms. So those definitions of what is a small food retailer and what is a small family farm, that's on our website. I'm going to drop the link to our website in the chat because there's a lot of really excellent information there. So I encourage you to check it out. But it's also listed here. So you can see for a brick and mortar store, it's got to meet all of these bullet points listed here on this slide. But a small food retailer could also be a farmer's market or a farm direct operation. So a farm that has a farm stand or a CSA is also considered a small food retailer. Small family farms are also eligible to apply, even if they don't have a retail operation, if they're looking to expand their capacity to distribute to low-income, low-access areas and retailers in those communities. So there's a lot of nuance here, and I want to direct you all to check out our website for more specific definitions of what is healthy food. How does this grant program define healthy food? How does this grant program define low income, low access area? I'll just say that healthy food has a really broad definition. So be sure to read that on our website. And we have several maps that showcase areas that are identified by, U.S. Census data to be low income, low access. But if your business is not located in one of those areas, you may still apply, but you've got to really build a case, providing some demographic data as to why you feel that your community is a low income, low access area that could really benefit from a grant like this. So what can be purchased with these grant funds? Equipment is an eligible use. So there's needs for equipment like cold storage, whether that's display or storage, display shelving, point of sales machines, any kind of equipment purchases that would really result in more variety, more options, expanded options, greater purchasing powers so prices can be lower, anything along those lines. There are also operating expenses that are eligible as well. So personnel that need to maintain a new produce display, for example, those expenses are eligible as well. And we have extensive lists of eligible items on our website under the eligible items category. So which grant applications will be scored the highest? Well, we worked really closely with an advisory committee made up of small food retailers and small farmers and folks that know this landscape really well, and they helped us identify some priorities for scoring. So applications that can promise to have a really great reach, to really reach a large number of folks living on a low income or a large percentage of a community that's low income, low access. Those will score well. Any proposals that can substantially reduce the price of healthy food will be scored highly. Not all proposals need to promise to lower the price of food, but we recognize that that's a really important part of access is cost. So those applications will score highly. Any application that can create a lasting impact beyond the period of this funding. And this is a one-time grant with, at least 2, maybe 3 rounds, but after 2024, this grant program won't exist anymore. So the evaluation committee will be looking for applications that can help make an impact beyond that time. We'll also be looking for applications that result in dollars remaining in their community. So we know that a lot of communities have to travel outside of their town to get their groceries. So if this proposal can result in some of those dollars staying local, that will be prioritized. Any applications that promote sort of a more comprehensive response, not just to food access issues, but also farming issues, other nutrition issues, those will be prioritized. If the application is submitted by someone living in that low income, low access community and is a community member, that will be prioritized as well in the evaluation process. And then proposals that show some environmental stewardship, either in their energy efficiency, their selection of equipment that's energy efficient, or some other way to sort of advance environmental goals. So that was my quick overview to try to leave as much time for questions as possible. But our website is really has all of the information that we think you'd need to know to apply for this application. You can look at the application questions before you open up the application form. You can see every question that was asked to the program team, either at the other information session or through our through email. And you can also learn about what to expect if your proposal is awarded. What kinds of supporting documentation will you need to submit? What kind of contract will you need to sign? All of that's on our website. So yeah, I'll open this up to questions. So please feel free to type questions in the chat or come off of mute, and we will take questions now.
And just for logistics, everyone, it will be easier if you type your question into the chat if we have a lot of hands being raised at once, because it'll be hard to track who is first. So yeah, please do that, and then we can get to them in the order that we see them in the chat.
I cannot access evidently the chat, so it's kind of like I had a question about expansion of customer base. My business currently, I have established places, and I mean distribution systems like food hubs and farmers markets that I am already doing, but I will not. My business specifically will not show an expanded customer base, but like the food hub will be able to reach more people. My farmers market, would be able to, reach more people. And so I'm sort of wondering, how would I actually be able to document that?
If you don't mind me asking, Jenny, what kind of business? Yeah, what kind of business are you? Are you a farm? Okay, I'm not sure if Jenny could hear my question, but yeah, I mean,
Okay,
farmers
yeah.
markets. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jenny.
Okay. Yeah, I have to figure out how to make this work. Yeah, like I said, I'm producing goat cheeses.
Okay, so yeah, if you fit the definition of small food retailer, as outlined here on this slide, or small family farm, you are eligible to apply. And right, it is a little bit more of a challenge for farmers to make that connection with how an expanded yeah, how a grant request will result in increased opportunities for someone living on a low income to purchase healthy food, but things like SNAP authorization, if that's something you're interested in, that would be directly targeted at folks living on a low income. Yeah, I encourage you to go onto our website and maybe read some of the examples of questions coming in that might kind of get the wheels turning a little bit for, yeah, what kinds of proposals might result in expanded access.
Mickey, I'll just jump in with a question from Lauren, which is, if the goal is to reach the highest number of customers, what about our low population communities? Is that even a consideration since we have a limited customer base?
Yeah, so Lauren, I appreciate that question. I kind of paraphrased in when I was creating this bullet point on greatest reach. Our official language is on our website, and that is reach the greatest number, or for a rural area, the greatest percentage of a community that's low income, low access. So hopefully that helps to clarify.
And also just to add to that, Lauren, we do have a mandate in the legislation to award at least 30% of all the grant awards to rural communities.
Thanks, Amanda.
Sure. I'll go ahead to the next question from Marietta. I manage a farmer's market in Woodland Park. We are already a SNAP DU participant. Would purchase of a mechanical chili roaster and hiring a person to do the roasting be applicable? We have been in the community for 33 years as an active farmer's market.
That's an interesting question, Marietta. While the definition of healthy food is pretty broad, it does draw a line at prepared food. So prepared food means hot and ready to eat food, meals, food that's designed that, that a restaurant would produce. So I think we need to think about if the roasted chilies constitute a prepared food or not. I know they kind of straddle that line a little bit. Let's say they do. The application would really need to demonstrate how that chili roaster and that staff person is going to result in expanded access to healthy food. So I encourage you to kind of frame it that way. Feel free to take a look at the application questions and what kinds of responses you'll be asked to provide, and think about if that argument could really effectively be made. And then, yeah, consider if you want to have that application.
Great. Jana, I'm going to ask you to come off mute, and your question seems very specific to meat processing, and I want to know if that's connected to a store as well. So could you maybe provide a little background about your operation or how you would be applying to this grant? If you're able to hear me. Jana Neely. I might go ahead and just, I'll read it, Mickey, but it's that I'm under the impression that my bison meat will need to be USDA certified and processed. Would the grant funds be available for these processing and traveling costs?
Processing is a bit outside of the scope of eligible uses. That's the first place my mind goes without knowing a little bit more context. But yeah, Jana, feel free to elaborate if you do want to.
Okay.
Sorry, it wasn't Janet, it was Chris Neely asking the question. So we are a small family farm. We raise bison in Southwest Colorado. And in order to sell our meat, either to retail establishments or to general customers, we have to have USDA approved processing and packaging for our meat. The processor is a couple 100 miles away, is the nearest USDA plant up in Montrose. And it's quite an expense to get that processing and to travel up there with live animals to get all that done. Then to return whenever the meat is ready and pick it up and bring it back down to be able to distribute it. That was my question.
It's a good one. So again, I think we do want to double check on those processing costs. I think we'll get back to you and we'll put this question in the Q&A document when we have an answer just about those processing costs. But again, assuming they were, the application will still be really focused on how will this expand options for someone living on a low income. You know, is 100% of the meat going to be sold to a low income, low access community, that kind of thing. So yeah, the outcomes we're really looking at are expanded retail opportunities for folks that don't have a lot of options. So I'd say Chris and Jana, let's be in touch about those specifics once we maybe put a little bit more thought into it and check in with our compliance team. But I hope that answer helps as a band-aid for now.
Hey, I'm going to jump in with Nicole's question, which I think is just useful for everyone to hear. That she asked if we're allowed to submit pictures of our current operation and plans to support our application. And that is a big yes. You're more than welcome to submit photos, you know, any supplemental information that can round out the application. It is not required, however, but you are welcome to submit that.
Thanks for that question, Nicole. And just using that as an opportunity to remind folks that there is the submission of the Google form. That's the application, all the application questions. And then what is required of everybody is to submit a budget. And we have a template of the budget proposal that you can make a copy of and use to fill out. And that needs to be emailed. And the email is listed on the website. But in that email, you can also include images that would help support your proposal.
Thanks. So the next question is from Sammy. Could this grant help supplement a market manager's time so they can focus on more SNAP Double Up Food Bucks outreach? And or could this grant fund a farmer's market management software program to help streamline administrative duties so that the market manager can focus on food access programs?
Yes, I would say take a look at our website, and I can actually. Are you guys able to see this new screen? That's the website. Great. Okay, so I can scroll down and show you where to find more information about what kinds of expenses are eligible. Because I'm scrolling down past, past the previous recording of the last information session. And I would go to this drop down, Sammy, and look at eligible personnel expenses. This operating expenses bucket has quite a lot of options. So I would take a look at that to see how those operating expenses might fit into your application.
Okay, ready for the next question, Mickey?
Sure.
Okay. Actually, let me get back to it. Let's see, so sorry. Say we calculate we are 10% more expensive than city market. Would a 10% subsidy on every receipt be allowed? But this is from Laura.
Thanks,
Um,
Laura. So, one of the non-eligible expenses is for actual food. So, direct purchase of food is not an eligible expense for this grant. Yeah, so hopefully that helps.
Lisa's question is, can you use the grant money to purchase animals, cows, sheep, pigs, to be able to keep your business costs lower?
Unfortunately, livestock is not an eligible expense either, Lisa, sorry.
Marietta asks about paying for technical support for things like website, email management. And Marietta, are you a small food retailer? Do you have a store, or are you a
Marriott is the farmer's market from, or sorry.
Yes, I'm with the farmer's market in Woodland Park. Thank you.
So technical assistants and consultants are eligible. It's got to be really directly related to expanding access to healthy food. So some of the examples we have listed, technical assistance to support becoming or remaining SNAP or WIC authorized, that kind of thing. So yeah, technical assistance would really need to be directly focused on expanding access.
Okay. There is a question that I think may have been submitted in Spanish. Adonai, did the person who asked that question, are they able to come off mute? Maybe not.
Sí, creo que fue, bueno, la pregunta era
Yeah, the question was, give me a second,
que si la cantidad máxima es
if the
$50,000 por año,
50,000 a year, it's per
ah,
calendar
la
year
cantidad federal
or
mi
federal fiscal or my fiscal year?
Great
That's the
question.
question. Maravillosa pregunta.
Great question. It's per calendar year. So if this business were to submit a proposal that's awarded in the first round, that's year 2023, they could, in theory, submit another round that could be awarded in 2024.
Okay, next question is simply staying in business a justification for these funds?
That's a good question, Jay. So I think, there's a question in the application that everybody's got to answer, and it asks the applicant to describe the food landscape in your community. And if your business is the only retail location to buy food, and there are some operating expenses that you need to stay afloat, definitely think about this grant as a way to, continue staying in business. I don't know if that helps, Jay. It really will depend on how critical your business is in that retail food purchasing environment.
Well, and this is for a farmer who I'm a little disappointed that I felt like she was a little dismissed just now when she asked a question, because we tried to answer it. I told her to come here, ask it, and then needs to go back and read the website. But it's like, she could use, financial support to keep producing her products. And I just want to know that, like, if, things get to a point, she may, want to just shut down altogether. But if these funds can help keep a business afloat long-term, that it seems like that would be a good reason.
Well, first, let me just say I'm sorry that I came off as dismissive. That was not the intention. I think a lot of these, just to generalize, the case is better made for retailers than farmers. Farmers have to do a little bit more connecting of dots to really show that what they're asking for is going to make a meaningful difference for someone living on a low income. So if this mission of this grant program was to, so just support farmers doing farming, then it would be a totally different story. But because the purpose of this grant program is so focused on that end user, the person in the community who, needs to see a difference from before and after the grant funds were awarded. That's where it's really hard to say for sure if that request would fit as eligible.
And I'll just add to what Mickey said with Jay that, we have other opportunities to help farm businesses, particularly through our loan program and other grants. And so we can always connect more outside of this call about, potential good fits within our other programs. Hopefully that helps. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question. And Mona, I'm going to read yours quickly and just to say that, yes, this is an eligible expense. So purchasing the POS to participate in SNAP and other programs is an eligible expense. And, that's listed on the website. And we actually have other resources too to help people purchase those types of equipment. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next one. From NOLA, parking can be prohibitive in our community and public transportation is very limited. Could grant funds be used to cover a free customer shuttle to help our community more easily access our farmers markets and reduce parking costs?
That's a really good question. That I would, what I'm thinking of now is how delivery trucks that would be used primarily to distribute food is eligible. So I would think that would also be an eligible expense. Transportation vehicles to shuttle people to a location. So let me get back to you on that one, because I do think that is that's something we haven't quite fleshed out fully in the development of this grant program. So that's something that we'll check back on and reach out later about.
Sorry about that. Lauren asked, what happens if a farm no longer needs the infrastructure that's paid for by this grant in the future? To clarify, I've been involved with a farmers cooperative that ended up with all their resources being sold and the money had to be returned to the government.
This is a good question. So, and this does come up, a lot with federal grants is, if I buy a piece of equipment with money that's coming from the federal government, do I own it or does the federal government own it? And this is something that we have gone back and forth with our compliance team about, and it was determined that the owner is the grantee. There will be one report due after the award has been the grant funds have been expended and those things have been purchased. The program team will be requesting a report that shows that it had the impact that that was intended. However, after that, that's not really something that CDA is going to be following up on. We understand that there are sometimes factors beyond a business's control in how their business needs to be run 5-10 years in the future. So
Okay, great. Next question is, as a farm would like to purchase equipment that allows for more efficient harvesting or weeding in the fields, which ultimately would help reduce operational costs and increase produce availability. The question, how do we estimate the costs on the budget template if we're hoping to purchase used equipment versus new?
Mm.
Especially since there's no guarantee that used equipment will still be available once granted.
That's a really good question, Anita. And we do want to stress that purchasing used equipment is totally eligible, encouraged. What I would do is try to find a range for the kinds of equipment you want to purchase, and then request sort of the upper end of that range. The evaluation committee will be able to, will be evaluating sort of reasonableness of that budget request, but the actual purchase price, that doesn't need to be a set, firm, unchangeable number when you submit your application to when you're actually making that purchase. So what I would do is look for the piece of equipment you're interested in, determine the range, request the upper end of that range, and then continue with your application afterwards. Or if your application is awarded, then the next steps would be sort of working out the scope of work. The awardee would invoice CDA before purchasing. We would advance those funds, and ideally that invoice would reflect a truer figure compared to the range quoted in the application. If that makes sense.
Okay. Is that clear for the person who asked it, Anita? Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question because we do have a good amount. Great. So Laurel is asking about an applicant being able to apply once per calendar year. So once in 2023 and once in 24. Is there a limit to the total funds per applicant? So I will just answer that by saying no. That you can apply for 50,000 in 2023, you can apply for 50,000 in 2024. Both of those can be fully funded if they meet the criteria and they're selected. We won't be awarding after 2024, so essentially 100,000 is the maximum. Okay, Ian is asking, he's a small family lettuce farm in Denver, and they're in the process of purchasing a cold storage unit to avoid excess harvest waste to allow us to donate or sell more to Lila instead of throwing produce away. Would this be applicable for grant funding, given we have started this process already?
Processing a purchase. This is tough because, and this is not determined by the program team at all. The grant cannot reimburse for a purchase that was already made in the past. So it has to, the timing is frustrating, right? Because if that storage unit is arriving tomorrow, it's really tough. Our hands are kind of tied there with what we're allowed to award. But if that cold storage unit, costs more than, if there's sort of a gap still in what your business is able to pay, and you need some funding to cover, maybe the final payment that hasn't been made, something along those lines. We also have listed on our website increased utilities due to a recent purchase. of a, you know, a piece of equipment that was expressly purchased to increase access to or lower prices for healthy food in low income and low access communities. So maybe take a look at that utility option. I'm gonna try to pull it up here, highlight it.
Okay, I'm gonna jump down to Susan Wyman's question about their farm having several ideas for reaching more low-income customers. Will partial funding be considered if the reviewers like one portion of our approach but not another?
That's a great question. Yes, the evaluation committee does, is able to say, you know, maybe this request was ineligible, but the rest of the request was eligible. So partial funding there, or, you know, we're only going to allocate 2.5 million in round one, but we have 3 million in requests. You know, the evaluation committee will do their best to make sure as many are funded, and that may mean partial amounts. So yeah, hope that answers your question, Susan.
Okay, do we need to submit a budget for our store sales or a budget for building the expansion to sell more product?
Thanks, Martin. So the budget, and you can see an example, we provided a template and then also some sample budgets. The budget just needs to be what you're requesting for this grant application. We don't need to see what your current sales are. We do have some questions in the application about how will this expand sales? And I will say, if you are applying as a farmer, part of that eligibility requirement includes your gross revenue. So if your application is awarded, one of the things that you'll be asked to submit, if you're selected for award, is proof of your gross sales. So that would be the only time we're really looking for an income statement like that.
Hey, Don's question is about being on the board of directors of a nonprofit health food store in a small community in Saguache. Hoping to get grant funding for several things to expand healthy food access, including more cold storage. One of your questions asked how much in dollars certain food types could expand. Our data is broken down into specific food types for our purchases. Can we give a more broad answer and reference our purchase and sales data? Will that cause us to get a lower score if we don't break it down into categories like meat, produce, bakery?
I would say, Dawn, you know, do your best and answer that question in a way that makes the most sense for your business. You know, that question, if your proposal is selected to be awarded, will help the program team build out the scope of work and the deliverables we'd be looking for you to report on. So we'd want to make sure those match with the kind of data you're able to easily pull. So feel free to reach out to the program team or your outreach and TA provider. Since it sounds like you guys are in San Luis Valley, for some support there.
And then there's the second part about would it be helpful for us to also submit supporting documents we've created regarding benefiting parties or other standalone documents. And I can just chime in and say, yeah, supporting documents are great. And with your question about, is there a word or character limit on the questions? Mickey, there is, yeah. And so, you know, if there is additional information that you want to share, you can submit supporting documents that might help illustrate and answer better.
Yeah, and you'll see the character limits as you start to populate the field below the question on the actual application.
Okay. Okay, I think something got a little bit weird on my chat, so I think I'm still in order, but Nicole, being already a SNAP and EBT vendor, but having a hard time reaching the low-income community, can funds be used for marketing to reaching these communities like direct mail costs?
So we do have some examples listed here under education expenses, educational material that directly targets low income, low access communities in Colorado. That could include, education about, you can use your EBT card at this location. So yes.
Great. Brian's question is about, would it be helpful to provide the East Denver Food Hub as a means of distribution to the small farms that receive the grants? Food would be sold to school districts, hospitals, et cetera. The Food Hub would not be receiving grant money, but could be a solution for small farms looking for the grant to help provide food to lower income areas.
This is a good question. And Brian, I do just want to let you know that the East Denver Food Hub's nonprofit arm, Ag and Food Labs, is already an outreach and technical assistance provider for farmers in the Denver metro area. So that's, they already are kind of like supporting small farmers applying in that region. But I think this opens up a general question about small farmers. How can small farmers really reach a low income, low access community? And there are a number of ways to do this, and it might be kind of location specific, but it might involve getting in touch with a food hub or distributor, or finding sort of a little bit more support with those distribution costs. So yeah, I think, Brian, does that kind of get at what you were suggesting?
Yeah, I think so. I was just trying to provide access to anyone that, would be looking for a different distribution channel, and maybe trying to work out the logistics together.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, the food hub like itself, like we were looking at this and thinking maybe this would be better applied towards small farmers that we work with. And just in this room, it seems like there's other farmers that could be interested in, getting their stuff out there. So, I just wanted to kind of float that by you, Mickey, and see what you thought.
Yeah. So yeah, there's other components of the community food access program, one of them being a consortium. So this consortium is designed to be a network of these small family farms and small food retailers. And this will really take shape a bit more after the first round of the grant. But this is where we're hoping to kind of come in and try to tackle some of these value chain coordination challenges to one, better connect small food retailers and small family farms, and also provide them access to more resources beyond the scope of these community food access goals.
Okay. Benita's question is about BIPOC led. Does that need to be at least 51% ownership and certified by the federal government, or could a co-owner with equivalent ownership be eligible?
So Benita, this is an open-ended question. So we're hoping that businesses will answer this in whatever way makes most sense for their business. So it's not a yes or no. So yeah.
Okay, and the last question that I see on here right now is the character limit to the long answer grant questions.
So Chris, I would just go into that application. They're different for each question. And take a look. There's kind of the two sections to the application, and it's really what the first question that you answer will dictate which application you fill out. So there's different questions if you are the owner of a small store. There's different questions if you are the owner of a farm stand. There's different questions if you are the owner of a farm that wants to start distributing more to low-income, low-access communities. So once you click through that question, you'll be able to see all the rest of the questions on the application and the character limits and the format of each question. Much of that is captured in the actual PDF that we provide right here. So yeah, you'll be able to see much of the way the application is structured by selecting this link, but you can also go into the application just to look at what those character counts are too.
And then, Mickey, will you scroll down the page to show Laurel where the questions for the previous sessions are? I wanted to try to share it as a link, but I think it opens up as a Word document or Google Drive document. Yeah. So it sometimes doesn't translate, but the direct link. So it's a little bit hidden down at the bottom there, but probably now that you've seen it, you can find it again. Yeah. And I think there's 36 questions and answers and counting on that list right now. Great. Okay. Yeah. I think that's all that I see in the chat. If I did skip over you, or you want to elaborate more on one of the questions or follow up, please feel free to jump in. I think we're in a place where if you want to come off mute in general, that's totally fine with this remaining 6 minutes.
Yes, I had a question relating to the costs associated with raising animals per market to Lila communities. If that would be, any of those expenses would be covered.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if there's that link between raising animals for low-income, low-access communities, yeah, feel free to take a look at like any of this eligible equipment that might factor into those costs. Any, yeah, probably point of sale machine might not make as much sense depending on what you're proposing, but accounting and book management, and then a lot of different operating expenses. So yeah, I would take a look at that list and yeah, see if anything on that list could support those activities.
So as a follow-up to the processing cost question.
Yeah.
The end goal to that would be to be able to offset the cost enough that we could sell. Bison is a culturally relevant food, and we're very culturally diverse down here in the Southwest. And they do some indigenous food pop-ups, and our food pantry tries to keep some indigenous foods on hand as well. So it's about reducing the cost so that we are able to supply them at a rate that they can afford. So that's where some of the questions get in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's really great context. You do bring up something that is another real kind of line that the program team had to draw, and that is, you know, the expanded opportunities really need to be retail opportunities. So you'll notice food pantries aren't eligible to apply for this grant. It's really just focused on small food retailers and small farmers that are feeding into that retail supply chain. So I think everything you described there, yeah, the culturally relevant piece, the lowering the cost piece. I think the processing piece we just want to check on, and then, you know, confirming that it's expanding retail opportunities.
As a small family farm, it's definitely expanding retail opportunities. Yeah. And that's just one of our avenues to just make sure that we are definitely reaching low income, low access people.
Okay, yeah, I think we have a little bit of work to do to just confirm that those processing costs, where that falls in the eligibility category, but we're gonna look into it and get back with you. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hey, Jay, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from what I just heard, that so farmers who primarily wholesale aren't going to be prioritized, because the farmers, I mean, there's a bunch of farmers here that they sell into a food hub and they sell into the grocery store, and they're not necessarily retailing to people. And so are you saying that that's kind of not what you're talking about?
So I'm sorry, I think I'm not. So any farmer that can make that connection, that their piece of equipment or whatever expense they're asking for is going to expand retail purchasing opportunities for someone living in a low income, low access community. So, right, that might look really different in different areas, but
could that be simply being able to produce more food
for the low income, low access community?
Yeah, well, our whole area is low income, low access. So,
right.
And then one of my questions is too, if we're selling into the food hub, do I have to show you numbers where the food hub delivers to? Because the food hub does sell a lot within the San Luis Valley, but they also go to Denver and wherever. And I'm not really sure what their percentage of retail to not low income, low access communities are versus this. So do I need to find that out if the food hub is one of their primary customers?
I think it will just be a tougher case, right? Because a farmer selling into a food hub, not knowing where it's going, is that expanding access for someone living in this low income, low access community and region? It's kind of more up to food hub, right? So that's where it's a little bit tougher for farmers to really prove that expanded access piece, which is really so critical and is such an important part and the purpose of this grant. So Jay, feel free to hang on. We can keep fleshing this out.
Okay.
And maybe with this minute left, if we can just go back to the transportation question, Mickey. Sammy was just saying that, just to follow up on the previous transportation question, but can these funds pay for transportation to the farmers market if we're directly serving low access people communities?
Yeah, Sammy, we're going to double check on that one too. So, yeah, I think it's a good question. I think there's sort of a precedent set by the fact that delivery trucks and vehicles are eligible for getting food to communities, but if we're getting communities to food, I feel like that a strong argument could be made. So we're going to follow up and double check. Cool. Thanks everyone for being here, and feel free to watch the other recording. A lot of good information there. And yeah, looking forward to seeing some really exciting applications.
And just to say, Susan, I see that you sent in another question. You're welcome to stay on and we can answer that. We can also add that to the list online that with that link that Mickey shared. So you can get that answer that way as well, if you have to jump.
I'll hold on for an answer if that's okay.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Mickey, do you have it or do you want me to read it?
Farm Venison Gardens currently sells about 20% of our vegetables, eggs, chickens to a local nonprofit for free distribution To low-income families, we sell the remaining 80% at a local farmer's market and our farm CSA. Am I hearing correctly that increasing production for local nonprofit is not priority of this grant, but increasing the reach? Yes, that's a really great interpretation there. Yeah, the free distribution piece really does. Yeah, it's frustrating because it seems totally in line with expanding access, but you know, this grant program is really designed to fit in a web of other support for food pantries, farmers markets, other forms of support for other specific entities. And this one is really the only opportunity for a small convenience store, a small corner store to receive funding. These are for-profit businesses that operate on really thin margins, and there are not a lot of opportunities that come around for them to get some infrastructure to expand access. So I apologize that a lot of these questions are kind of like at the fringe of what's eligible, but yeah, I think the most helpful exercise when thinking about is what I want to do a good fit for this grant program is putting yourself in the shoes of someone who lives in that community, who, you know, maybe doesn't have a car, has to take two buses to get to the nearest supermarket. Will this request expand access to them? Will they have another opportunity, a greater variety of options to purchase food, purchase ingredients for dinner, that kind of thing? So hopefully that helps a little bit for folks that are still hanging on.